Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman, and we're talking Main Street and the small business lenders that help it grow. Katie Wittucky, Lance Sexton. Hey, we know you're all trying to close your loans by June 30th, so let's just get right to it. You know how to ask questions. We love your questions. There's a certificate. Hey, Lance, I want to start out with the webinar you're doing on Wednesday. Tell us about it.
Well, Bob, it's going to be an update of PPP forgiveness based on the new release 3508EZ. 3508EZ, if you read the instruction pages and the certification, is going to encompass at least, I'm going to guess 90% or more of your PPP borrowers, so most will be using that. It is a greatly simplified form. We're just going to go over the details and what you need to expect in terms of being a participant bank, receiving a forgiveness application from the borrower, because I think this is going to be the most common one you see, Bob.
Yeah, and we're going to do a Main Street lending program on July 1, Lance, as well. We're still trying to put that all together, make sure we have enough updated information to do that. And, of course, we have our summer training starting July 1. But, Katie, let's go to the polls. And this came up last week because we had Lance and Katie, we had a question, and we got an email saying, hey, we're not an SBA lender. So we sort of want to know who our audience is. What's your guess, Lance?
I think a majority will still be SBA lenders or non-SBA lenders. I know we have some friends from SBA on here, and could be some borrowers. I'll be interested to see, but I still think a majority will fall.
That's why we threw that one in there. Let's see.
Yeah.
1%. We got 1% of Main Street, so very good.
No surprise.
Well, welcome all. We appreciate your support. We appreciate that we are offering a service that you deem viable or worthwhile, because you would not view this if wasting your time. So, and our numbers keep on growing. Hey, and we want to ask this question. Overall, how are you feeling about the PPP process?
And this is kind of a tough question, Bob, because we rolled out one of the largest government lending programs in the history of the country. And, you know, we've been doing this March, April, May. Well, not even March, April, May, June. So it's been rolled out and revised numerous times. And I'm not surprised by the bulk of the response.
You know, I'm glad to see only 11% are unsatisfied. I mean, that's still 1 out of 10. I don't mean to minimize that response, but I'm glad to see that we're in the satisfied. We have some issues. I think you would put me in that satisfied but have some issues as well. So
I would definitely be in the satisfied. I would definitely, Bob, be in the satisfied with some issues, but an understanding. But a big understanding, Bob, of why those issues exist.
And finally, this hit the news over the weekend. Do you have issues or an issue with lawmakers in Congress, their spouses receiving PP loans for their business?
And, Bob, I'm probably going to irritate some people with my response on this one.
No, not you, Lance.
You know, Bob, if they followed the rules, what's the problem with a congressman's wife or spouse who has a small business getting a PPP?
Well,
I mean,
as long as disclosed. I just want it disclosed.
Yeah, absolutely would want it disclosed. But if they followed the rules, and I can't remember, Bob, if there was a checkbox. I'd have to go back to the PPP application that says, you know, on your 1919, there's a checkbox that asks you if you are a government employee or a legislator or closely related party. So I don't remember on the PPP app if that existed.
And again, the spouses, employed people, and the whole purpose of this is to keep jobs and keep people employed. So I certainly understand the people who said, yeah, I have an issue. I have no problem with that. But I would put me down the no. Katie, weigh in here. What's your feeling?
I think I'm kind of leaning toward what Lance was saying. If they're following the rules, I mean, keeping people employed is keeping people employed. And I think those small businesses, if you have a legitimate small business, obviously, I'm not saying that for fraudulent businesses, but if they have a,
No,
have
no,
a
put
small
us down.
business,
Fraud back. Yes.
if they have a small business and they have employees and they're paying their employees with this loan, I think that's the main goal of the program anyway. So I would lean toward it's probably okay, but I would like it disclosed.
Yeah, and I want.
But
Go ahead, Lance.
Bob, you look at the categories here. You've got a auto dealership who have been greatly impacted by COVID-19. Family farms, guys, we forget how impactful this has been. My sister works for a major produce vendor for Walmart stores, and she said farmers have had to let their produce just sit in the fields because restaurants were closed, and it was restaurant-grade fruit and vegetables. So they've been impacted. The executive at a restaurants obviously have been impacted. Now, casinos have been impacted as well. Nobody can go to it.
It's the world's gone mad. Everyone's impacted. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm off personally. I think we need more small business owners or spouses of small business owners rather than attorneys in Congress. So the more small business representation, the more rural, the more farmers that we get. I think that's good for Congress.
Well, I again, as long as they, just like Katie said, as long as they follow the rules and got it legitimately, which I am sure the way the process worked, it's hard for me to believe that there was anything other than Roger Williams' relative submitting a loan for an auto dealership. I'm going to believe that these were done properly until somebody tells me differently. Of course, Friday Katie could be reporting that things are all fraudulent.
And Katie, this is bipartisan. What's the breakout between Republicans and Democrats on this list?
It's about half and half. I believe the first two on the list are Republicans and the second two are Democrats.
Very good. SBA and Treasury have announced transparency, so Treasury's back down from that, and I think they're going to disclose it. It looks like they're not going to disclose the smaller loans. Is that correct, Katie?
So for the smaller loans, the loans below $150,000, they're going to release some of the information, but they're not going to specifically release the business names and addresses for those. So that's about that's a very big portion of the loans, though, as we've seen over the past couple of weeks. So it really is the bigger loans that were a bigger concern to begin with, that they're going to be releasing the names and addresses and more information about.
Yeah, very good. Tell us about the numbers, Katie.
Right, so the numbers, we're looking at about between 70 and 80% of those loans being released, that information based on, this is just the information from last Friday. So it looks like it's just going to be some details about it, but not the specific names of most of the borrowers.
Well, I want to give Lance, Katie, I want to give a shout out to the industry. I know SBA from time to time criticizes lenders for not doing these smaller loans. I think the industry, the lenders, SBA, Treasury should be very happy with these type of numbers in terms of breakout of the smaller loans.
Yeah, if you look at it, under $350,000 represents 94% of all the PPP loans.
Yeah. And under 50,000 and under 100,000. I mean, that's what that is telling me in terms of the raw numbers is that these are hitting mom and pop Main Street businesses.
Absolutely.
Katie, we had some procedural notices come out. What's important that we need to know about?
So the first one we got this morning was on refinancing EIDL loans with PPP loan proceeds. If you remember a couple weeks ago, the SBA withdrew one of their previous statements and said they needed to kind of tweak it. These are the new rules on when you may and may not, or when you have to actually refinance using a PPP loan. So in general, PPP borrowers who received an EIDL loan before January 31st or after April 3rd may not refinance using a PPP loan. If they received the funds from January 31st to April 3rd and the PPP borrower used an EIDL loan for purposes other than payroll costs, then they can by choice do it, but they are not required. And then if they did actually use the funds on payroll costs, then they must refinance using a PPP loan.
Very good, very good. And Community Advantage, I know that's a smaller subset, but what's going on to that?
So there's a couple changes to the Community Advantage program. As we all know, that expires September 30th, 2022 now. So it's a little further. I don't know if we have the slide for that.
Micah, can you advance the slide, please? There we go.
So they've just modified a couple of things. They've changed the requirements for refinancing non-SBA guaranteed same institution debt, increased the number of Community Advantage loans a lender must initially disperse before their delegated authority that went from 7 to 10. Provided additional guidance on the expiration and renewal of Community Advantage lenders loan guarantee agreement. That's just an update on that form. And then they also provided notice of the SBA's intent to allow a limited expectation to the moratorium on accepting new Community Advantage lender applications. Again, just an update. So that's all in the dashboard. You can download that notice and read it if that's something you participate in.
Very good. We got a comment from Corey, which I don't disagree with. Says, my point would be there are probably many businesses out there that got PPP loans that needed it less than a Congress member's spouse. Corey, I would agree with you 100%, but the fact is we have a surplus or we have money left over, which means everyone who wants a loan is able to get one. But I agree with you. If there was a hard ceiling, then we should impose some caps. So Lance, I assume you were taking my side on that.
I agree with you, Bob. The challenge is when the first round ran out of money so quickly, there was all this discussion of people who didn't get PPP loans. So the second round gets populated, and we're still setting, and Katie, I could be wrong, we're still setting at about $100 billion available. So
right.
everyone who wanted a PPP loan could have gotten one. And even today, Bob, they've got 8 days. You know, I talked to somebody Friday. They've got 8 days to get their application in.
There are lenders out there who are, I know a lot of lenders have cut off the application, but there are lenders out there they've told me, hey, we will accept the applications until next Tuesday. So.
Well, and we did a poll question last week, Bob, asking the lenders on Coleman report how many are still accepting PPP applications, and that was 70% of the lenders that are on this call.
Very good. Joseph's out this week, so if you want to register for the webinar or any questions, just shoot them over to me or Katie, bob@colemanreport.com. You can even send it to Lance. Lance is very good on questions, very good at responding to questions. Or you can send it to Katie. I'm sorry, go ahead, Lance.
You send your questions to me. If you send a registration, I'll probably forward it to Bob and Katie.
All right, we'll figure it out. Hey, thank you all for joining us. Thank you for joining us for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Talk to you tomorrow.
Have a great day.